Hey everyone, welcome to Psyber-Conversations, the show where it's okay to agree to disagree. Today we're continuing our discussion on Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. Uh, if you haven't already, please hit like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the show. Okay, so we were talking about Anakin is on the council, but he's not made a master. He's complaining about it, and so now each of them are spying.
Comes off as a whiny bitch.
Yeah.
I think we could probably cut him some slack for a couple reasons, but he does come off that way. I get it.
Yeah.
And
But not for
Palpatine
nothing.
Drags him to the opera.
Yeah, and we get the cool story about Darth Plagueis.
Yeah, that's a good intro. Also the imaginative presentation of this sort of, I guess the only way to put it is like an audio visual performance.
Yeah,
With
it was.
holograms and
It's always interesting to me to see how in any science fiction, really, how people are entertained in that world.
yeah.
We already have heard some of the music that they listen to in the Star Wars universe, including like the very iconic Cantina Band song, but this was the first time we
But
got to
these
see
are
something.
aliens. Like aliens feel vibes differently than humans. And so how do you bring 1,000 alien races together in a place and then put on a big budget entertainment like that? I mean, it looks
Yeah.
like that place that they're in is almost as big as the freaking Senate. It looks like you could fit 50, 60,000 people in there.
Yeah.
So,
So it was very
yeah,
interesting to me.
how are you going to present that?
Yeah. So that was interesting. I would have liked to see more of it because I wanted to see what it was.
Yeah.
But obviously that's not the point of the movie. So we get to the cool story about Darth Plagueis, and it's heavily implied that Darth Plagueis was the mentor of Darth Sidious. They don't like come out and
It
say it, but
is. Yeah,
it's
I don't
implied,
know. It's
and
not heavily implied. It is definitely implied by the internet in the 20 years since, but
yeah,
I don't know if it's heavily
I
implied in this.
actually
I think
felt.
we want it to be true. I think it has become
Yeah,
true.
well, George Lucas said it's true, but
There
yeah,
you go.
like I will say this, I didn't buy it. So I guess I shouldn't say it's heavily implied because I didn't buy it at first. People were talking about the smirk that Palpatine gives when he talks about it's ironic that he could keep other people alive, but he couldn't save himself, something like
That
that.
smirk could have been a lot of things,
Yeah,
though,
I
to be
mean,
fair.
the first time I saw it, I didn't put two and two together. I didn't think he was talking about, yeah, I killed him in his sleep. I was thinking,
I considered it, but it was a long shot in my
yeah.
mind.
So I guess I shouldn't say it was heavily
It was
implied.
not obvious.
It was a little bit implied. Other people took it and ran with it, and George Lucas said, "Yeah, that's a good idea."
That very well could have been the internet going, I wonder, and then George Lucas going, that's a good idea,
Yeah,
and then taking credit for it, and so now it's canon.
I wouldn't be
It
surprised at
could
all.
be.
You know my opinion
I
of
wouldn't
George
either. I
Lucas,
wouldn't
so
either.
um,
Well, only in the sense that creativity is a synergy once it's released.
yeah,
When you have an original idea, it's your idea and you get full credit for it. But once it becomes part of the public consciousness, it's impossible not to see it spread because of a joint um, effort on the part of all humanity that's engaged in it. So that could have very well be a story that is now canon to the Star Wars universe that was synergistically created by its original creator and the fan.
yeah. In any case, so we got Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious. Well, supposedly Darth Sidious killed him in his sleep, and and of course we know because of everything that's going around, we know that this whole thing is to get Palpatine in a situation where he can tell Anakin, like, you can save your wife, who I don't know about. you can save your wife if we tap into this power that Darth Plagueis had. Um, and it's where you can
Your
really
wife, who
see,
definitely does not exist.
yeah, your wife that I have no knowledge of, but and I have no idea that you are worried about her. But
And had nothing whatsoever, I assure you, to do with you guys having a nice honeymoon on
yeah,
Naboo.
yeah. Oh, but we did skip over one thing that I forgot to mention. Shoot. When Anakin starts having the nightmares about Padme, one of my favorite shots in the movie is when he goes to talk to Yoda, and they're both sitting cross-legged on those couches, those like ottomans, and you can see the rays of sunlight through the shades. So they're making like bars of shadow over their
Oh
faces.
yeah,
I love those shots. And you'll notice, like, when Yoda
yeah,
talks, his face is mostly in the light. Anakin's is like almost all the way halfway as he's caught between light and
yeah.
shadow.
That's very artfully done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I had forgotten to mention it, but that already happened because now we're at the opera. But so we get to the opera,
that's all right. It
and
was
then
worth mentioning.
yeah, and then we find out that they've located Grievous. So Obi-Wan goes, but not before Palpatine again overstepping his bounds, saying, "Oh, they need to send you on this mission." To plant a little bug in Anakin's ear so that he'll be that much more disappointed when they ask Obi-Wan to do it instead.
Yeah, the pressure on Anakin is relentless, and so I'm not excusing him for being a complete jerk and freaking out and killing kids. I am not necessarily ragging on literally everyone around him. Even Padme is kind of disrespectful of him. Like and Palpatine never misses an opportunity to be able to slip a little dagger in him. He's firing fiery darts at him the entire time. So
Mm.
I'm not making any excuses. I'm just saying that like it's very hard pressed in the writing to be sure that you kind of see this coming with Anakin, and he's kind of justified in doing it.
Well, except for the killing kids. I'm not going to say that's ever justified.
Well, I'm referring to his fall to the dark side. The
Yeah.
consequences after that are not Anakin. The consequences after that are a new persona that is created called Darth Vader, and he is ruled over by the dark side.
Mm.
And so I'm not excusing Anakin again, but I think that you could make a moral argument in the Star Wars universe for none of those sins that we see Darth Vader accomplish are on Anakin's ledger, because Anakin is the only one that is definitely on his ledger is the dismemberment of Mace Windu. He gets full credit for that. That
Yeah.
was his decision that literally triggered his fall to the dark side.
Maybe. I don't know. Because I don't reconcile two characters, even though I do understand that Anakin kind of
But
does.
Star Wars does,
Yes.
though.
Yes.
Star Wars asks us to, Josh.
Yeah.
We are asked to believe that even though they are the same person, they are not the same person. They are two different people.
I agree, but I mean,
And
it's
so I'm just like
what I mean
falling
is
into that bit of lore. That's all.
I think what I mean is because I see it the same way you do. Yes, he is two different people, but I mean, Anakin is still making decisions. It is Anakin the whole time, even if it is a different persona completely. He is ruled by his emotions when he turns to the dark side, and he is doing things that he never would have done before. But he's still kind of Anakin, even if he isn't Anakin anymore. I don't know. It's hard to
Yeah,
talk. It's hard
yeah,
to
you're
say
right.
it in
No, I get
words.
it. It's the morality that George Lucas paints. It's difficult for us in the real world to accept, and I'll tell you why. I flip out tomorrow and go and I rape two women and I go rob a bank. Then a month later, I'm arrested and drug into court, and my excuse to the judge is, I just wasn't myself. I was this other guy. I was Joe Blow, and Joe Blow's a really, really bad guy, and I'm not that guy anymore. I'm redeemed. I'm back to being Vern again.
You know,
You know,
it's
it
the
doesn't
Jekyll and Hyde thing,
work.
but yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah,
But in the Star Wars universe, we're asked to believe that, and there is a bit of mysticism sprinkled on top called the Force,
yeah.
and so it kind of changes the rules a little bit. Um, it has its own internal morality and its own rules, and we are not, even to this point, even at this advanced stage of Star Wars lore in 2025, we are still not fully privy to exactly how the Force works and what its limitations are. I don't even get the impression that the Jedi themselves understand what the Force's limitations are.
I guess,
People are constantly experimenting and probing, and a lot of it is dark side stuff.
but I guess the succinct way to say it is that it's a Jekyll and Hyde situation. Because
Yeah.
Is Dr. Jekyll responsible for what Mr. Hyde does? And
Well,
sort of,
it's
but not
easier to
completely,
separate the two
because
because they're like
yeah,
completely different people. They don't look exactly the same. One of
no,
them is like the Hulk, and
yeah,
the other one is like Banner. And so they're it's easy to say they're two very different people. In Anakin's case, it's Anakin. It's
yeah,
always Anakin. It's Anakin killing the kids, and it's Anakin hiding underneath the mask. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah.
So it's a little bit harder to separate. I don't know what are we saying here? Is that the skin deep identification of someone is all that really like,
I think it's
credits them
easier
for the
to.
good and the bad things that they do?
Well, I think it's just easier when you're talking about a case like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where they do look so different and they behave so differently, whereas Anakin looks the same and
Yeah.
behaves the same, but does things that the heroic Anakin would have never done, except he did them. So, you know, it's harder to reconcile.
That's a
Probably intentionally so.
it's another galaxy.
Yeah.
It's
In any
another Oh, I
case,
had a thought.
yeah,
I had a thought the other day. Wait a
it's
minute, I gotta
difficult to do that.
Jackson because I don't know if I'm the first person that's ever thought of this, but it just occurred to me, and I mentioned to my son that what if the Star Wars universe is not far away in the sense of being space, distance? What if it's just far away, as in it's a long way away from where we are at right now, because it's 20,000 years in the future for this galaxy. It's a Milky Way style spiral galaxy. What if the Star Wars universe is our universe? And the only difference is it's our galaxy, but it's 20, 30,000 years down in the future. And why is it that in the Star Wars universe the galaxy is teeming with humans? Humans are like the dominant life form, and then we've met 10,000 other, species. But it would it be like Star Trek, except if you kept going on that tangent, and then eventually the Federation would break down,
Well,
and
first,
pretty soon you'd have to like colonize the inner planets. They would become the inner rim, and so forth.
we'd have to have Dune, because Dune was like 10,000
Yes.
BC,
Yeah, Dune would
AD.
be
I
in
mean,
between the two.
yeah. So
Yeah, and
great.
In the Dune universe, there's no alien life. Like, we are the alien life.
Yeah,
So, but at some point we run into the Vulcans, and so eventually
yeah,
we run into 10,000 more of them. Anyway,
great.
it was just a thought, but I thought, like, I'd love to talk to somebody who's like, no, there's a problem because this and this. Like, I can't see a logical in story reason why the Star Wars universe, the Star Wars galaxy, is not the future of our galaxy.
We've talked about the opera. I
So
guess now
Obi-Wan
we
goes to
yeah,
Geonosis,
not
takes
Geonosis.
out Grievous finally. We get the
It's not
I'm sorry,
Geonosis.
it's not Geonosis. What planet is it? It's like Geonosis.
Yeah,
It's a desert planet with big pits in it.
and I forgot the name of it. Well,
What is the name of that?
it doesn't matter. Um,
Uh-huh.
in
Uh-huh.
any case, he goes. He talks to those guys with the teeth. Whatever they are, and then he finds out that Grievous is there and says hello there.
It's
And
Utapau.
Utapau, that was it. Yes, Utapau.
Utapau. That's it.
And he talks to the
Yep. And
Utapauans.
we have one of my favorite sidekick actors come up with his corduroy skin and his sharp teeth. What's the guy? The guy that was that played he was a wizard. He was the mouth of Sauron. He was
Oh,
the train man in the Matrix.
yeah.
He was he was the
I
wizard in Legend of the Seeker.
Yeah, I forgot the actor's name, but he is a good actor.
Yeah, well, he's been in so many things that you don't even know that it's him because he's just a great character actor that hides behind the makeup a lot of times.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Bruce Spence. He's 79. Yeah,
What
he
is
was
it?
also in Mad Max
Tion.
2. He was also in Mad
Yeah, that's
Max
right. He's
2
been in
and
tons of stuff.
yeah,
Tons of stuff. Um. Uh. What's the Tien
Tion
Medin?
Medon. Tion Medon.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
guy. Yeah, he looks freaky. He looks like a bad guy, but he's clearly a friend, and he's
Yeah,
quietly asking, pleading
he's
the Jedi
saying
for
like
help.
we need help, but we can't say it. So and so Obi-Wan,
Thousands of battle droids.
yeah. So Obi-Wan hides out. He sends the ship away, as a decoy so that um Grievous is Grievous will think that Obi-Wan is gone, but then Obi-Wan shows up and he says, "Hello there." And then we
That's
have
where we get the famous Obi-Wan. That's the
well,
second time
it's a
he said
callback.
that. So
It's a
then
callback
now it's
to
secured.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a callback to Alec
now it's
Guinness.
secured. Now it's an official Obi-Wan thing.
Yeah. But, I mean, it was initially just a callback to Alec Guinness, but it was done really well. And,
And
it's,
I have to comment on this battle when Grievous breaks his four lightsabers out and his arms
yeah,
come apart. That is super cool. This is
yeah,
a very menacing bad guy that we don't get nearly enough time with in the movie.
yeah.
In fact, I was introduced to Grievous with the Gendy Tartakovsky miniseries that came out, the only Taste of the Clone Wars we had just before Revenge of the Sith came out. I was there. It was released before the movie came out.
Mhm,
So we had a little bit of background, but his presentation, Grievous's presentation in Tartakovsky's animation is super intimidating.
mhm.
More intimidating even than the movie version. But overall, this is a very, very scary character
Yeah,
with a backstory that needs to be told and has been, but that's another subject. But
yeah.
my what I'm getting at is that when he breaks out the multiple lightsaber and he starts spinning them, that's that's a blender of death. There's no
Yeah.
way to fight that. But the reaction from Obi-Wan is to lose his balance. It's a
Yeah.
strange. It's almost like they filmed it at a completely different time and then maybe didn't have a proper reaction for him, so they found something on the cutting room floor and stuffed it in there because it seems inappropriate that he looks down like he's on a tightrope and loses his balance. This is not something you can fight with a lightsaber in a traditional Jedi sense, but the
But they
reaction that
never
Obi
really,
Wan gives to him is inappropriate.
yeah. And they never really show how he did it either. It looks like he just sticks his lightsaber in and that stops as you call it, the blender of death. Um, like
Yeah,
we don't really see a good way for him to get past the defenses. He just puts his lightsaber there and it stops him. But
yeah,
I,
and it's all very Saturday morning cartoon again. It's just we're getting on to the next part, which is where our hero has the upper hand and Grievous is on the run, and then he jumps into his big
I
unicycle
will
and
say
takes
though
off,
that was
and
the
the
hands
beats are
down
there.
that was the hands down the most terrifying I ever saw was of Grievous. I mean, is when he falls back down because he gets like force pushed up into the air, and then he falls back
Oh
down
yeah,
and does his spider walk. And I was like, nope,
yeah,
I don't want to see that again. Don't ever do that again.
yeah. He's yeah, he's kind of unstoppable, and his claws. This is canon throughout the Clone Wars. His claws on his hands and his feet dig into metal,
Yeah,
so he can spider walk on just about any surface, even in zero G on the outside of a starship,
yeah. But
and that makes him pretty
my
unstoppable.
daughter had the same reaction though when we watched it. His legs actually rear up into the air, almost like a scorpion's tail, and he's walking on his
Hmm.
arms like a spider or like a centipede. And yeah, both me and my daughter were just like, "No, I don't want to see that. That's not good." But he doesn't do it for long, and
Yeah,
then
he's scary.
he gets in that
He's
unicycle
genuinely
thing.
scary, and he's kind of Borgish in a sense that you can see underneath artificial elements, you see that there's a
Yeah, there's
chunk,
a
almost like RoboCop. There's just a chunk of the original guy, and he's full of hatred. His species doesn't look like that normally. His eyes are burning with dark side hatred,
yeah,
and he says he's been trained in the Jedi arts, but he just thinks that he's been trained in the Jedi arts.
yeah,
He's more of a technological terror than a spiritual one.
yeah. And it's foreshadowing a bit because this is what Anakin will become as well.
True, that's
A
true. Yeah,
technological terror, right? As they called the
yeah,
Death
more
Star.
machine now than man,
So,
twisted
yeah.
and
And one thing that I will complain about the Clone Wars, like we did get an episode where we see Grievous before he had we get a look at what he looked like or what his species looked like before the armor, but we don't get a very good look at it. So I still don't really know what he was supposed to look like under the armor, and I still don't know how he got to be the way he is. They barely touch on it, even in the
there
Clone Wars.
is yeah, no, there definitely is lore on that available out there. I'm not talking about extended lore. I'm talking about canon lore.
Hmm.
But I mean, I don't want to get into that backstory while we're trying to talk
No, no,
about.
no, no.
We've
Yeah,
we've
that's
had enough
yeah.
side trails. But if you are curious, then go and
Wikipedia.
look because there's
Yeah,
definitely lore to be gotten out there.
yeah, yeah. Wikipedia is the best place to look, I think.
Yeah, and his species is actually kind. They have this kind of like what's it called, exoskeleton,
Yeah,
that looks a lot like the artificial, mask that he's been given. So it's like so like he probably was in some mad scientist torture lab for a while, and they tried to make his chest and face at least look something like the species that he used to be, but it's just a mask.
yeah,
It seems like it's just a chest and a head hiding inside of a giant robot full of rage and hate.
yeah,
With so he has the passion and the drive of an organic creature that absolutely hates the things chasing with an emotional passion. And then he's got the 90% metal droid body that is cold-hearted and calculating and doesn't care what's in its way and has no mercy. And the combination of the two is a really scary combo.
yeah. Though I'm not completely certain why George would include several shots of him coughing. Like it was confusing because he
Oh,
looked like a machine,
at the
and
time it was confusing, but we know exactly why that happened. You know why that happened, right?
I don't even remember.
You didn't
I've
watch Kenny Tartakovsky's Clone Wars all the way through.
no, no, I have not watched it.
Ah, you should.
Is
Oh,
that
I highly recommend
is
that.
that
Did you ever
Visions?
see any of it?
Was that
Did you see like
Visions?
the first, what was it, the first? No, no, no. I'm talking about like 2002 here.
Is it
Tartakovsky's series.
is it
No,
on
it's
Disney
hand
Plus?
animated.
Is it on Disney Plus?
It very well should be. Yes.
Because no, I haven't
Um,
seen it. I didn't even watch the Clone
Oh,
Wars until
dude,
years
you don't know what
after.
I'm talking about then. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was released in 2003. This is the same guy that did Dexter's Laboratory and
Mhm.
Samurai Jack. And the animation is awesome. And or the original, I think, 5-part series came out just before episode 3 came out, and it gives a lot of the taste of what's to come. The Clone Wars are presented in that package between episode 2 and episode 3 live back in the 2000, early 2000s. That's the only taste of the Clone Wars we got, and part of it was an introduction to General Grievous, a very scary introduction to General Grievous. And there are several characters that get killed in that series, like known canon Jedi characters. And it leaves off right where episode 3 picks up, but then there's a whole bunch more of the series after that. They're quick 5-minute episodes, Josh. The entire series is like something like 25-minute episodes, and you can watch the entire thing in one sitting like a movie.
What
And it's
was it?
very, very well worth the time.
Who made it? Oh, Tarta.
Tartakovsky
Yeah,
Clone Wars. It's called the Clone Wars.
yeah,
It's called Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and it's got to be on Disney Plus. They own it. But it's the Tartakovsky Clone Wars from 2003,
yeah.
and Uh, that was my first introduction to Grievous,
Oh yeah, it is
and
on Disney Plus.
he kills 3 Jedi when he corners them. One of them looks like Shaggy from Scooby Doo. Anyway, in that series, Mace Windu is also presented to be a serious badass. There's one scene with Mace Windu that is awesome. You've never seen it. Oh, I'm excited for you. You got to see it. Mace is on a planet by himself, and he faces an entire droid army single-handedly. And
Uh-huh.
he does some serious moves in that scene that sort of solidifies why, when Anakin says, as wise as Master Yoda and as powerful as Master Windu. Well, you just compared the two and you use the word powerful on Windu instead of on Yoda.
Uh-huh.
What has this guy done that, well, watch that series and you'll see our first introduction to how badass Mace Windu was. And in that series, I think it was Shakti that Grievous kills. They have a hostage situation. He kills Shakti, he captures Palpatine, and at the last minute, Mace Windu reaches out and uses the Force to crush his chest. And as soon as it gets crushed, he starts coughing. And
Mm.
then when you first see him come into the scene in episode 3, he comes out of the ramp coughing.
Yeah.
It's a connection to, it's one of the things that will reveal to you for sure that the Tartakovsky series is canon.
Yeah.
There's nothing in it that contradicts anything in the Filoni CG series, and there's a lot in it that isn't in the CG series, and it is still canon. So
Yeah.
that's the reason why Grievous is coughing. But if you didn't see that, if you didn't know that,
Yeah, I just thought
right
he
off
had
the bat, when you go to the
emphysema.
movie theater, yeah, you get this bad guy, you get this incredibly intimidating bad guy that's just sitting there hacking up a lung, like like he just smoked or something. And
Yeah.
if you didn't know that, it wouldn't make any sense. But it
Yeah.
also is a setup for the fact that he has an organic chest, and
Mm.
Obi-Wan is going to kill him by igniting it. And
Yeah.
so I think that was kind of Lucas's idea, and it's possible that Tartakovsky took it one step further and explained it was Mace Windu that did that, and then Lucas was like, "Well, that's what it is now."
Yeah.
It's very possible.
Well, I'll definitely watch it. I've been meaning to watch
Yeah, you should.
I want to watch everything. It's just time. But I've
Well,
watched
for what it's worth, I'm just high recommending it because if you
yeah.
haven't seen it, you are missing out.
I mean, I've watched a lot of shows, including a few shows that you haven't seen, but there are a couple that I have
Yes.
not seen, including this one and also Star Wars Visions, which you told me is also really good, and I haven't had a chance to watch that yet.
Well, and that's anime, and that's
Yeah.
all over the place. I would definitely say some of those episodes are more misses than hits, but
Mhm.
I would definitely say that not a single one of them I regretted watching. They're all good, but they're way out imaginative, in some cases very risky. These are like acclaimed anime producers and directors, and they sort of have their own take. And
Yeah.
in some cases that's super cool, and in other cases it's like, that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
But it's certainly worth watching.
Kind of like The Matrix. What was it called? The animated one.
Oh, the
The
Animatrix.
Animatrix. Yeah.
Excellent.
Some of it
Excellent.
was
Yeah,
really good. Some
excellent.
of
I've
it
seen
was
that.
kind of weird, and I didn't know why they did it. That first one was
Oh, dude, the second Renaissance. You
yeah,
absolutely
that
have
was
to have the
good.
second Renaissance if you're
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
watch the trilogy. The
Yeah, I watched
trilogy and the second Renaissance.
well that and also the very first one. I liked the very first one they showed in the Animatrix, the computer animated of the two, the man and the woman, the captain and that woman, and she has to do the dead drop, which gets picked up.
Oh, yeah, the Last Flight of the Osiris.
Yeah, yeah,
Also excellent. I swear, not to date myself, but like when I saw that the first time, it took me a few minutes to realize that it was CG. I thought it was live.
yeah.
And it's
So
probably like when you look back, it's like, well, the graphics aren't that good. But at the
at the
time, it
time they
was it
were
was
yeah,
photorealistic.
yeah,
It took me a minute to realize, and I'm an animator. I've used to be a professional animator. And it took me a minute to realize that I was looking at animation.
yeah,
It was so well done.
yeah. In any case, getting back to Revenge of the Sith. So now what were we talking
Yeah.
about?
So Kashyyyk. Oh my gosh, we
Okay,
have
we
to talk
finally
about
get to see
Kashyyyk because
Kashyyyk. Yeah,
that is one of my favorite places in the Star Wars universe, and we never seen it except in video games and imagined it in the books, maybe.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I figured it would look a little bit like Endor, which it does because George Lucas said that the Ewoks were basically backwards Wookiees. So,
Hmm.
you know, and it makes sense. But yeah, it was good to finally see it. Um, and we got to see the Wookiees, including Chewie. Um,
It's kind of it tickles me. Kashyyyk tickles me because it's kind of like the way I like to imagine ancient Earth looking, with a pressurized atmosphere, a completely different oxygenated atmosphere with a greater barometric pressure and all kinds of alien things that we tend to think that if we went back a few million years that we would just be breathing the same atmosphere. But there's been many cataclysms here, and I feel like under the right conditions we have enough modern proof to suggest that trees in the past would have been far, far larger
yeah,
than they grow today. And so Kashyyyk kind of gives me that preview of what that would look like if trees were, hundreds and hundreds of feet high, and you could actually build a whole village in their boughs. It's a very safe place for the Wookiees to live because Kashyyyk is famously incredibly dangerous.
yeah, yeah. So we finally get a look at Kashyyyk. We didn't get much of a look, but we get enough because there's just not enough time. The movie's rushing along,
Yeah,
but
again,
we
we're rushing. We're
yeah,
rushing.
but we do get to see the Wookiees fight, and we get to see that Yoda is there. So we have to establish that. Um, and then of course we get word that Grievous is dead. So now we finally get to the point where we know Anakin is about to have his fall, and this is like I said before, this I feel like everything leading up to this point has been way too fast, and his change from Anakin to Darth Vader is too sudden. But it's a minor complaint because I think overall it makes sense that he would do this. So Mace takes several Jedi with him. They tell Anakin stay because, should we talk about?
Well, Palpatine
We going too
reveals
fast?
himself. We should mention,
I
yeah,
skipped
yeah.
over that.
Palpatine reveals himself, and does it on the basis of the idea that you've been having nightmares about Padme dying, which probably have projected into Anakin's head by the dark side or by Palpatine
I'm sure of it.
specifically.
Yeah,
And because you are fearful of this, and fear is literally the beginning of a chain of bad things that lead to hatred. Then I can help you with that. Like
yeah,
yeah, that's the pitch.
yeah,
Like this is something that nobody can fix except me, so you better be my friend.
yeah. So
And
he,
Anakin does the right thing. He goes straight to Daddy and tattles and tells him everything. Like even at this point, he's still 100% a good guy, and he does exactly what he should have done. And
yeah,
what does May say? We're gonna go deal with it right now. Anakin's like, I better come with you. Anakin should have gone with them,
yeah,
but Mace is like, nope, sit this one out. Like we owe you everything for what's about to happen, but sit this one out.
yeah.
So again, he gets treated like a child
I
all the
get
way
on.
to the very end. He gets poked and poked and poked.
I completely understand, though. From Mace's point of view, he does feel like Anakin is too close to this. But yeah, at the same time, being on the outside, if Mace had brought Anakin, it would have turned out very differently. Because Anakin would have seen that
Well,
Palpatine didn't have
yeah,
any hesitation, killed off several Jedi without even thinking, including Kit Fisto,
that's right.
my man Kit with the great smile.
Yeah. Didn't even get a chance to meet Kit Fisto before we had to see him get slain.
Yeah,
I'm really happy that the Clone Wars gave us more Kit Fisto. Also, not to beat on the horse too much, but the Tartakovsky Clone Wars has a really cool episode with Kit Fisto in it, and you really get to see him in full action in that one as well.
yeah. Because really, Kit Fisto, his big claim to fame is that he's got the killer smile from
Yeah,
Attack of the Clones.
that boy loves his job. He loves his job. In
So
the animated Clone Wars, he's smiling the whole time that he's fighting, but he's got I don't know if it's a special lightsaber, but he's got a lightsaber that he uses underwater, which is really cool.
yeah. Um, But anyway, so if Anakin had been there, it would have turned out differently. But Anakin wasn't there, and Anakin sits in the temple and cries for a bit because he's thinking about
Well, wait a
Padme.
minute. I think it should also be mentioned that if Mace had gotten his way and Anakin would have sat this one out, it also would have turned out very
Yeah,
differently. Mace
if
would have come
Anakin,
back.
yeah,
He would said you were right. You were right all along. It was Palpatine. You did the right thing. I took care of it. He backed me in a corner. I had to kill him. War's over.
Yeah,
That would have been the end of it right there.
yeah. But unfortunately, Anakin has to, has to go where he's not supposed to, and at the exact
What do
wrong
we do?
time, and because we have to, because we need to get to the next movies. So
Well, it would have been a pretty different Star Wars galaxy if Mace had just slain him right there on the spot.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess we have to have our drama.
Anyway, but the biggest problem I have is that Anakin turns so quickly. Like it's. I actually thought it was really well done when he's sitting in the temple and you can see the wheels turning in his head. Acting credit to Anakin or at Hayden Christensen, because you know exactly what's going through his head, not just because George hits you over the head with it by replaying some of the stuff that Palpatine said and showing Padme pacing around in her room at the same time. Like obviously we know that they're thinking about each other, but the pain on Hayden Christensen's face, he really conveys it well, and you know that he's thinking like,
Yeah, he
do
does.
I go and do I interfere because I need to make sure that the right thing is, happening, but I need to make I don't, whatever he chooses the wrong thing because he goes and, you know, and we know what's going to happen. But do you want to talk about the lightsaber fight
I
real
think
quick
that
though?
the pressure that Mace puts on him in the moment is the reason why he turned so quickly. And I think Lucas set that up pretty well. The situation is like act now or forever hold your peace. And so it was a desperate thing that if Anakin would have had 2 seconds to think about it, he might have changed his mind, but he didn't have 2 seconds to think about it. Because
Yeah,
if he had waited 2 seconds longer, it would have been over. And
but
who
the
knows what he would have done if Mace had killed Palpatine and then come back and said, "Man, you missed it. He's dead now." Who knows what he would have done? He might have flipped out.
but
Might have been worse. I don't know.
but
Maybe he would have made himself emperor.
but like aside from him thinking about it, when he goes and he acts, what bothers me is how quickly like he has to make up his mind quickly, but then there's so little of him realizing it. Like he he cuts off Mace Windu's arm. Palpatine flings Mace Windu out the window, out the window, not the window, and then Anakin only says, "What have I?" What? Mace went out the window, and then
The window, not the window.
and then Anakin's single line is, "What have I done?" And that's it. And that's the only
Ain't no
time.
coming back from this.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he doesn't even have to think about it at that point. Like what I would have expected would be he has to isolate himself. He has to figure out what he just did. He has to figure out what he's
Yeah.
going to do.
Well,
But instead, no, he's in it whole hog immediately. And I mean, granted, he doesn't have
I hate
time.
to say it, but we're rushing. We're still rushing. We're
Yeah.
rushing them through. And that's the reason why. It does feel weird. It's like, oh, I'm in deep doo doo now. I guess I worship you.
Yeah.
It is
It's
very
way
abrupt,
too
but
quick.
it takes us from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 0.5 seconds, and it gets us where we need to be, which is Anakin standing beside the Emperor, ready to be stripped of his skin so that he can have a black suit put on
Yeah.
and give
Again,
us the characters that we know.
but once
It's
again, it
forced.
just I feel like it validates what I said before, that this should have been two movies. That this should have been
Well,
the
okay,
ending
I give you that point.
yeah. If this had been two movies, this would
Lucas
have been
loves
where
his
it stops.
trilogies. I think
Yeah.
Twilight split its last movie in half. The Hobbit split itself into three chunks.
Yeah. Harry
The
Potter, the
last
last
Harry
book.
Potter movie was split in half.
Yeah. The Hunger
It's
Games.
probably something that could have been done if Lucas didn't love his trilogy so much.
Yeah.
And let's face it, until movies started doing that, like in the 21st century, it wasn't really done. Like we had the Superman trilogy, and we had the Star Wars trilogy, and then
Yeah.
we had the Indiana Jones trilogy. Like everything was in
Well,
trilogies.
Lucas already had to do it as a trilogy because he had already called episode 4. But I still say that my initial argument stands. What we got as episode 1 is extraneous, it's not necessary. Episode 2 is where the story should have started, and episode 3 should have been 2 parts.
Yeah, it could have been episode 3 part 1 and episode 3 part 2.
That I think
That's
that
kind
would
of what
have.
it said.
I mean, maybe, but we have seen other franchises fail because of that. Once people started getting
Yep.
wise to it, I mean, look at Divergent.
Yep.
Divergent, the first movie did really well. They made a second movie. It did, I believe, even better. They said they were going to take the third book and turn it into 2 movies, and people were like, "Nope." And then the third movie underperformed, and they never even made the last movie. So you don't even get the end of the story. If you want to see the end of the story, you got to read the books because the movie didn't do it.
Yeah,
So
well, I think that it goes back to the Saturday cartoon analogy. It just maybe because it was too much packed into 2.5 hours. Maybe it needed to be two-parter. Maybe it's because Lucas was preaching a Saturday morning cartoon vibe. But that's why is that it's maybe not poorly written so much as it is rushed,
yeah,
and maybe rushed for a good reason. I guess that's where it rubs people the wrong way. Is if you really want the moments to matter and the moments feel rushed and they feel childish, then they don't matter as much, and then you feel betrayed. And
yeah.
and I think that's the reason why so many people react so emotionally to it, is because they really did expect, if you will, a religious experience. And it turns out it was kind of just a kids movie about space wizards and lasers. And that's okay. As far as space wizard and laser movies goes, it's one of the best.
Well, as we
But if you're
know,
expecting a religious experience, you're going to walk out disappointed.
a lot of people love this movie, um, and I liked it more than the previous two, but it's still not nearly my favorite. And part of it is because it is so rushed. And
Mm.
like I said, if this had been split into 2 parts, we could have had a whole movie on the fall of Anakin Skywalker, and then a movie on the rise of Darth Vader. But they didn't, and so we didn't, and this is what happens. So he says, "What have I done?" And then he's in whole hog. He commits himself to Palpatine, and Palpatine decides to call him Darth Vader, and it's another thing that we don't really know why. I would love to know in universe what the reason is why Palpatine chose that name. We know in our world there's like several different theories, including Vader means father, and that might be why he called him Darth Vader. But in universe, we never really find out why. He seems to pluck it out of his ass.
Heck, why would that be? No, no, no. I reject that explanation. That sounds like an explanation that was written before the prequels came out,
I have
because
no idea who wrote it or
Palpatine
when.
called him that. Why in the world would Palpatine call him father?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just people saying it because they said that's where George Lucas came up with the name
Yeah.
Darth Vader. I don't know. I have no idea. But in
Eh,
universe, we don't even get that explanation. We get nothing. And I would love to
yeah,
know.
there's a lot. It's a big galaxy. We don't get a lot of explanations for a lot of things, but
Yeah,
I would assume on common sense that he had that name stored up for a long, long time, dream of the day that he had, his ultimate apprentice. He had an entire lifetime to watch Anakin and plot this whole thing. So I almost guarantee he already knew what it was he was going to call him, and probably in his language on Naboo, or in some culture that he's familiar with, or something meaningful to the Star Wars galaxy that we don't know anything about, the word Vader means something.
I would like to
It may have
know.
just been something he thought sounded scary, and he picked it for the way it sounded.
Maybe, but I would like to know where all of the names come from. I mean, I always, back in 1999, I thought Darth Maul was called Darth Maul because he mauls people. But Maul might mean something completely different in the Star Wars universe. I don't know what Dooku
Well, Darth
means.
Sidious.
Yeah,
Is that because
it
he's
sounds like
insidious?
Insidious, but
Darth Tyrannus. Is that
yeah,
because he's a tyrant?
yeah,
It's not
that's
all
the
that deep. It's really not that deep. It's
no,
just Saturday
but
morning cartoon. These are cool names for toys.
yeah. but still, the way that it's shown to us, it looks like Palpatine is plucking the name out of the air. He even looks to the side like he's thinking about it. He's like, "From henceforth, you shall be known as Darth. What do I call him? Vader. That's it." And
Darth Scary Faced.
yeah, no, he didn't have a scary face yet. Darth Pretty Boy.
Darth Murder Man.
Mhm. And then,
You shall be known as Darth Intimidation.
but whatever. He's like, "No, I guess I'm gonna call him Darth Vader for some reason." And Anakin says, "Thank you, my master." And then but whatever, because then
Immediately takes to lick at his boots.
yeah. And he
Thank you for changing my name, Master. I mean, what?
and now
That's
he's
like
and now
that
he's immediately
he
in the
really
space.
does go into full worship mode.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. In the same scene that he said, "What have I done?" Palpatine tells him, "Oh, and now we're gonna turn on the Jedi. You gotta go and you gotta kill every living being in the temple." And he does it. Doesn't even think. It's just, "Oh, well, I already killed Mace Windu. I guess
My
I gotta kill
master
some
told
kids."
me. What else am I supposed to do?
Yeah, time to kill some kids. So he does.
Yeah. Well, but I think that the same point that I made about Vader, the same point I made about the name it choosing is it holds here, and that is we are coming into the middle of a long story, and I never got the impression that he made it up at the spur of the moment. I had the impression the first time I saw it that he had it already sort of loaded in the chamber. He already knew what he was going to call Anakin,
Maybe he
and
did, but he looked like he
Anakin
was thinking about it.
Anakin has been teetering on the balance of wanting to follow this man for 20 years. He's considered Palpatine to be like his second master next to Obi-Wan and probably vacillated back and forth a few times about which one he'd rather have. And so when he says, "What have I done?" First of all, he's kind of blown a fuse because he's in deep doo doo if he continues to be a Jedi. He's going to a penal colony somewhere. He's
Yeah.
going to be stripped of everything, including Padme. He has made a decision that has permanently altered the course of his life. And then the 15, 20 years of him being mentored by this guy, him pretending like he's opening up all these great opportunities for him, feeling like he's the right hand man to one of the most powerful men in the galaxy. All of that is weighing on him, and so it makes sense, although it is forced and rushed. It makes sense that he's like, I've just made the decision that ties it. I'm throwing myself fully in with this guy now. And this is and what is he going to do? Go murder kids? Okay, not exactly. He has already told Padme at multiple times in the past that what if I could fix everything I would, and I would force it to fix. I
Yeah.
would simply do what needs to be done and make absolute change happen overnight, and all of this conflict would be over because I would just put my boot on everybody and then there'd be peace.
Yeah.
And so when Palpatine is like, I've kind of been your daddy all this time, so why don't you join my team? And Anakin's like, well, if I stay on the team I'm on, I'm going to a penal colony, so it's you and me now. And what are we going to do? We're going to raise the temple. That's what needs to be done. So we've kind of been given all of the cards that we need. And when the cards start laying out on the table a little wonky, it's because the deck has already been stacked.
Yeah.
And I
It's
feel like that makes sense. I feel like that's believable.
I think that it makes
It
some
is
s- I
rushed.
think it makes sense, but it is rushed. That's the problem because
Yeah.
it may make
Yeah.
sense
And that is the
in
problem all the way through.
yeah, it may make sense in the universe that we're being shown, but it's still a movie and I want to enjoy it. I don't want to feel like it's rushed. But again,
Yeah.
this is
Agreed.
what we got. I still think that the movie
Agreed.
should have been
I
split.
I kind of feel like maybe it was before the time of the extended editions, but I kind of feel like we might have got robbed of a extended edition of Star Wars. That like the George Lucas director's cut where there's a bunch of stuff that they filmed that they never put in, and then they cleaned it up digitally and sewed it back into
I
the
mean, there are a
story,
few
and now they're releasing a 3-hour version of the movie.
yeah, there are a few scenes that were cut that were released as deleted scenes, but
Yeah, as
not
DVD
much.
extras, which
Yeah,
you could
yeah.
catch on a YouTube video, but
Yeah, but not enough to
it'd be
make it.
cool
Yeah.
if it was sewn together. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't think there was enough. Like, there's a couple
no.
scenes that some people regret not being in the movie, but
Yeah,
I think that
but
for
there's
the
not
most part, there
enough.
just wasn't enough to extend it.
Yeah. It would have been nice if there was a 4-hour well, in this case, I think that they would have benefited from having a 4-hour version of the movie that would,
Uh,
extend
Look,
it so that we
I
could.
watch 4-hour Lord of the Rings movies. You bet I would be there to
Yeah,
watch 4-hour Star Wars
me
movies
too.
if it came out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, not every movie needs to be 4 hours, but this would be one that I
No,
would
definitely
definitely
not.
say is a candidate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
There are movies that I would never even suspect that I would think would need a 4-hour version, but sometimes it is to a movie's benefit. But we didn't get one. And what we got, I feel, was way too rushed. And that's my biggest complaint about the movie overall. So,
And a lot of people complain about Palpatine electrocuting Mace, and then he was like dying, and he's like, "He's killing me," and everybody's like, "Why don't you just stop throwing your lightning?" But I think that that whole thing was actually also deliberate. Palpatine is very calculating, and so he knows that he's had it. He knows that the Jedi Master is about to end it, and he lets himself be electrocuted so that he can play that sympathy card for Anakin.
yeah,
It's a gamble, but it pays off. And I don't know if he saw this coming, but it makes sense that the dark side in him was okay with the dark side taking control of his skin and molding him into whatever horrific figure it wanted for him to become this ultimate figure of power that Palpatine had dreamed about becoming his entire life.
yeah,
So it's silly to say, why doesn't he turn off the light? What do you literally think that he's laying there dying and he's trying to like cry out pitifully to Anakin because he's about to kill himself with his own lightning? No, I think that's a stupid internet rumor. I think that he was doing it on
I
purpose.
hadn't actually heard it, but yeah, no, I figured he was, he knew what he was doing. Though I still
He knew
love
what
the
he was doing.
robot chicken Star Wars where, he says, how are things here? It feels a little warm on my face. And Anakin says, I think that all of that force lightning rebounded and hit you in the face. And he looks in a mirror and he says, he's like, oh my God, I look like I have a scrotum for a face. What am I going to call myself? Darth Syphilis? Which is the best line I've ever heard. And on that note, that concludes this episode of Psyber-Conversations. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation. If you haven't already, please hit like and subscribe. Next week, we will continue our discussion on Revenge of the Sith, and I hope to see you there. Thanks, everyone. And as always, remember, make tomorrow better than yesterday.